Hello everyone and welcome back to another Getting Stuff Painted, my bi-weekly update give or take on the various miniatures I've been painting for the games we cover here on the channel. And despite doing a little bonus episode where I covered a bunch of scenery that I've been painting, since that's a bit boring and it's all the same, I actually did manage to paint even more scenery. We're barely into the second month by the time you hear this of 2024, and I've already painted more scenery than I think I did for the entirety of 2023. Which is pretty ridiculous, although it helps that I learned some techniques to speed up the process with the zenithal highlighting and things. But anyway, so we're going to talk about a bit of scenery. We're going to talk about Core Clash, we're going to talk about Riot Quest, we're going to talk about Rumble Slam, and a whole warband in fact, that I painted basically from start to finish without interruption for Warcry, with a bit of a story attached to them. So we'll cover that last because it will take the longest. We'll start from left to right as always, so get a cup of tea, sit down, listen to me ramble, and talk about painting things. So the scenery we've got here is actually connected to Core Clash, which I believe you will have seen the viewer verdict video on. It's a game I got on Kickstarter. I think it was GameFound, maybe exclusively. I can't quite remember if it was via Kickstarter. But anyway, I played a little bit on the channel. It was never a particularly successful campaign. They did make their minimums, but when a miniature game comes to crowdfunding, they're obviously looking for like millions. And it never got that big. In fact, it started to lose funding as the campaign went on, and it was obvious it wasn't going to make like all the monies, which is a bit of a shame because it is a fundamentally good game. There is a little bit of iffy translations from the Chinese, presumably it was written in. But the models are fantastic, and it did come with this great scenery like destructible buildings that break open because you hit them once, or rather you hit a robot into them once, they shatter a little bit, hit a robot into them again, and then they explode. So in order to give it its best possible chance for the viewer verdict version of the series, and the potential way of bringing it back, I painted up some new miniatures for it, decided to ignore the paint jobs they have for the game, and instead go for what they're obviously referencing. And I wanted to paint up the scenery that it uses. It doesn't use much scenery. This is all the scenery that comes with the game if you're playing the standard mode. If you're playing advanced, there's 2 or 3 more building types that are much smaller that you have to paint up. But just as a matter of note, it comes with these mountains. They look like rocks. I actually think they would be perfect for like Battletech fairly large rocks. Like these are multi-use scenery that don't need to just be used with the thing I got them in. So that's another reason why I painted them. But 4 rocks, spray painted with Citadel's grey paint. I forget what it's called offhand. The grey spray paint it has. Is it really not focusing on a rock? There we go. So 4 of them, and then I did a dry brushing, maybe a bit heavy-handed. It almost looks like a dusting of snow with Ulthwyn grey afterwards. But again, you kind of have to do like quite an aggressive dry brushing if you want it to stand out on camera, I feel. Like it stands out a bit too much. Well, this one I went a bit way too much, but as a dusting of snow it also kind of works, especially if you have a snowy map. I think I'm going to use these on a Warcry map I have planned that's meant to be a bit snowy as well. By the time you hear this you might already know how it turned out, but I think it'll be after this because I want to include the iron golems. But 4 rocks done for the buildings. They were spray painted just in a bog standard silver paint. I believe it was Army Painter's silver paint, whatever they call that. I picked out some bits and pieces with Talisar Blue contrast paint, then I gave a dry brushing with Army Painter's Rust technical paint, just to show this aged look, because within the context of Core Clash, like all resources are kind of running out and the bots are fighting over what little is left. So I did this to make it look kind of like the building had been shot off with a beam. I'm not sure I like the effect now looking at it, but you don't really need to see it that much. And it does also help at a glance to tell you, has this building got 1 hit left in it, or does the building have 2 hit in it? But they're all the same. I think I used some black to just pick out some burnt machinery on the inside of the building there. It's a neat little effect, and it's a neat little game. It is a great shame that the original campaign didn't do well enough for it to basically have any chance on YouTube or anything like that. But hopefully that will show that viewer verdict will at least give it a fair shake with a potentially larger audience, and I hope it does. And then from Core Clash we have not Optimus Prime and we have not Shockwave. Oh, and something to note on this as well, you are going to see it across everything here painted. Not as much on Shockwave because I didn't use it, but if you remember last time I was complaining about that known oil, the new mixture from Games Workshop. I was struggling with it on Prime as well. He's a bit too shiny for my liking, or not Prime I should say, but still, as he tries to get into focus. I found, I was looking through my collection of, like, sorry, my dog is getting into the wires. Excuse me, hi. Excuse me, that's camera wires. Please, out of there. Thank you. Yep, thank you. Very nice. Yep. Okay, we're good. As I was saying, I decided to look through my collection of how much non-oil do I have left, and is it the new type or is it the old type? And I found, I have one more pot of the old type and I have one more pot of the new type, and you can tell the difference whether or not it's copyright in 2020 or 2016. So I opened the other pot that's marked 2020, i.e. it's the same mixture I was complaining about last time, and I've tested it on some new miniatures that aren't here to show you yet. Well, actually I can show you right at the end. I tested it on the two with shields, of iron golems. Two of them have shields. I tested it on them. I'm painting up some Battletech that isn't quite done yet. I've used it on those, and it still pulls weird. It still gets sticky in the crevasses, and sometimes it's a bit shiny, but it's nowhere near as bad as, like, I've tried my best to tone this down. It was reflective like a mirror. So I think I either just got a really bad mixture in the bottle that I was using and complaining about all last time, or it has the gloss version of non-oil in it by mistake. It is one of those two things, because the other bottle I opened, nowhere near as bad. It's much more like it used to be. Still has some issues that I don't like, but it's usable. So basically I've tossed out the other non-oil. Well, I haven't literally, because I might have a use for a glossy non-oil, but thankfully I've noticed, tested and found, there's a bit of grass on him there, isn't there? Hang on. Did I get rid of it? I didn't get rid of it. What is that? I can't tell if it's, actually it might just be on the model. Right above, like, right there, once it comes back into focus. But anyway, I tried to tone down the shininess on this by doing a dry brushing of Necron Compound, and then also just going over it with contrast paint again, so his colours are a bit deeper than I would have liked for what I was going for. But this is Bal Red and Talisar Blue, Lead Belcher Silver for the in-betweeny bits, Black Templar for his gun, again with a dry brushing of Necron Compound. And I was just going for that Optimus Prime look, because that's clearly who inspired this particular bot, and I am a-okay with that. It does look like he's got the Matrix of Leadership on the outside, so I painted it to look like the Matrix of Leadership. For Shockwave, because I was hating on the non-oil that I was complaining about last time, I didn't use it on him other than for the silver and for his central whatever view screen. I don't really know what that's meant to be, his breastplate, I guess. And you can tell I have, because it's so much shinier than anything else on him. The purple, which is Luxian purple, is just straight on to the base coat of Grey Seer, so it doesn't look as metallic as I maybe would like, but I didn't want to touch it too much while I was mucking around with the experiment with the non-oil. The bases were just Basilicanum Silver with non-oil and Talisar Blue. I noticed again they were so shiny that I went over them with the dry brushing of Necron Compound. I actually went back and did that to the ones I'd previously painted as well, just because I think it added a bit more, like, metallic shine, which is fine in that instance. So they're all more consistent with that now, and they look okay. And if you aren't familiar, they have magnets in their bases because you slot their team number or team colour into that little conveniently sized square there. Very neat models. If you want to go back and see the original unboxing I did of Core Clash, you'll see all the characters that come with it. There's like 16 playable ones. There's huge bosses whose boxes are sitting right behind me actually, and would eventually make it to the table if the viewer verdict does well enough. I'm not sure if it will. I think it's too niche, but if you are interested, they are still selling some unsold versions of the boxed game that was at Kickstarter or GameFound, wherever it was, on their website. It's Boar Studio, B-O-A-R. I'm not endorsed by them or anything like that. They just made something I quite like, and it is a shame that not enough came from it. Next, we have a little addition and a large addition to Riot Quest, one of which has been in a couple of videos already. So this is Bumbles the bear, who will protect you with his life as long as you have food. But the second that you don't have food, he will wander off and find someone else to protect instead. Love the miniature, very cuddly. He does have the overly shiny non-oil on him, but it doesn't have as bad an effect on metal miniatures, and he has weight to him. Like, he is an old metal miniature. I think one of his paws was maybe resin. The rest of him is metal, and the non-oil doesn't. Oh, the dog might bark in a second. Wait for it. Wait for it. Nope. Okay, never mind. Something went through the door though. As I was saying, it doesn't affect it as badly when it's metal. I feel like the metallic actually adds to it. Like last time we were talking about the lady with the giant bazooka, and it works with it. Like, it actually makes it look quite nice, despite me not particularly enjoying the shininess of it. Frostheart Blue, Bal Red, Nazrag yellow. His skin tone or fur is just the base coat with non-oil over the top, and that's basically it. The back looks a bit like, you can see where it's pulled, and it looks like slime, which is not how non-oil should look, which is a great shame. The base is just the AK texture paint I've been talking about with the sewer contrast paint over the top of it, or Wildwood, one of the two. I've mixed them together so many times now, I alternate, and I'm not sure which is which anymore. And then the second from Riot Quest is a little screamy man from the other version of the starter set, which is winter something themed. His name is Shivers. He is very small, so it might be hard to get him in focus. He is overly shiny because, again, this was done before I did the non-oil experiment, but he is just screaming. It reminds me of the Muppet movie where the one guy is screaming, but then it shows him in on a bus and everything, and he's still screaming. It's that kind of expression, so I gave him like eyes pointing in opposite directions. And when I posted out a preview of this on Blue Sky, I said internal screaming is becoming external. So he's just a very funny little guy. So just Guilliman Flesh for his skin tone, Wildwood for the various bits of fur in his beard, Vulpus Pink for his tongue, and that is Imperial Fist Yellow, I believe I used for the yellow parts. It's definitely not Nazrag, and it's definitely not Yandin. So yeah, it was either that or the other new yellow contrast paint that is named Ironjaw. That's the one. Ironjaw yellow. I think it might have been that. So very hard to get in focus on such a little guy, but hopefully that gave you a good enough look. He's fun. There's 4 others to do from that particular starter set, and that's probably once when Riot Quest will make a third appearance, once that other half is done. I'm looking for ways to show the teams, because everyone can mix and match, so it's really hard, especially when there's multiple base sizes, and most people sell 3D printed hard plastic, hard resin, hard filament, and from my experience of getting some of those for God tiers, they just tear up the bases and it's not nice. So I would love to have like flexible rubber ones. Can't find any for a good price, unfortunately. So from Rumble Slam, we have the only 2 things I had left to do for the starter box, and then we have Pipinyama, who wreaked havoc on the battlefield, or in the ring I guess I should say, in the one battle report he's been in so far. I don't have much to say about the 2 little goblins, other than they're also going to be a pain in the you-know-what to get into focus. I think that is. I use Warp Lightning for their skin tone just to differentiate them a little bit from the orcs, and that is Flesh Terror Red for their leotards, and Wildwood for his cap, I believe, in this particular instance. They do have the shiny non-oil on them, but thankfully, again, wrestlers are meant to kind of be oiled up, and they have lots of muscle lines, so it doesn't really matter too much. And this one in the Well What Is It pose from Dark Souls, which is one of my favourite poses in existence. Hopefully, there we go. Again, same colours for him, just the base coat on the white thing wrapped around his bicep, and not much else to say about him. Oh, I do have one thing to complain about. He was attached to his resin piece by his head, and there was no way to cut that off without taking off a chunk of the head, so it's not perfectly round. It kind of looks like he's got a buzz cut. I'm not sure that's going to ever be in focus enough to see that. There we go. Hopefully you can see that now. So it does look like he's got like a really small buzz cut, but that's just because he was connected to the resin like that, so you had to snip there. Didn't really work out that well. Pipinyama, the largest miniature for Rumble Slam. Very fun. I wish I had a nicer, warmer, brighter pink, because that's what it's meant to be in the official paint job. I had to go with Vulpus Pink because it's the only one I had. I have that Magus Purple, which is a very, very light tone, but I wanted a bright pink. So unfortunately I just didn't have the colour I would have wanted for this, and I didn't want to try and mix one up in case I wanted to make some changes later, and I didn't want to buy a paint I'd only used once. So I went with what I had, and it is a mix of like within the same tone, I guess. We've got some Bowel Red, we have some Athematic Blue, I think that is Magus Purple I used there, and that is Frost Heart, and that theme goes throughout. And he is a living pinata who has taken to wrestling to extract his rage on people. My backstory is he's from Fortnite, and he is filled with candy, and the candy is spilling out all over his base and all out his back. His streamers just fly out of him as he takes damage. Like, it's a very, very, very creative idea. Oh, it's one of my dog's hairs gets on there. A very creative idea for a wrestler. Absolute pain to put together. This is not in the right place at all, but I chose to put it here to have extra connection points to hold it steadier. But just in terms of how he looks, it is wonderful and hilarious. I used Basilicanum Grey for, like, he's got stones in his legs and hands, and the base coat just for the whites of his teeth and his eyes. But absolutely fantastic, very fun to look at once it's done, but he was a bit of a pain, and if you look at it too closely you'll see that even with me spray painting this guy to try and avoid the thing TM, they still do it a little bit, and it's the most frustrating thing about working with Rumbleslam's miniatures so far is that they do the Modiphius resin thing. Even if I spray paint them, it doesn't fully stop it, so multiple coats were required, and the non-oil of course did sink into some places. Like, that looks like it's still damp, right? It looks like it's slimy. It's not, that's just how that bad mixture dried. But yeah, you can kind of see it happening over here in the neck as well. And not so bad around the back, a little bit in the hole there, but in general it's a really fun miniature, and I think again at tabletop distance it looks perfectly fine. Obviously I'd wish I'd thought of doing the non-oil experiment before I painted a bunch of stuff, especially because I've been on a bit of a paint a lot of stuff phase, but what can you do? I know for the future, and he is a pinata, maybe he is a bit shiny, and going forwards though hopefully we won't have to deal with this issue. We have one last thing to talk about now. It's a whole warband of 8 miniatures I think, so I'm going to get them front and center. So here's the boring backstory part. Back when Warcry was first a thing, I believe this was one half of the original starter box. That's the half that made me almost get it, because I didn't like any of the launch warbands for Warcry except the Iron Golems, which is who you're looking at right here. I was like, I just like the style. I love how stupid this guy looks, but we'll talk about that in a second. And I was like, yep, that'll do. It's convincing me, but the other warbands just didn't do anything for me, so eventually I talked myself out of it, and I wasn't as diverse in the games I was covering back then. So I was like, I'll just pass on it. Fast forward to now, you can only buy them directly from Games Workshop. They don't give them, well, and some third-party gaming stores buy them from Games Workshop and then sell them on, but the price is Games Workshop price, which ain't great. I think it's £35. But happened to be browsing eBay, saw somebody put these up already fully assembled, already fully base coated. I couldn't say what, it looked like Grey Seer to me, and I kind of tested and it looked identical. Already based the bases with some textured stone and a little bit of a coating in something, I'm not sure what, and they were just selling them for a good price. And I think the auction had been up for like minutes when I saw it. I just happened to see it at the right time. I was like, okay, I'll have that, and they got to me perfectly fine, no damage at all, despite being fully assembled, and they were just ready to paint. So I just got to it and I painted the entire warband. They're going to be in the next Warcry video. I do apologise for the delay between them, but I don't want to keep on using the same things, you see, so I had to get something else painted up, and this took my attention. As for the scheme I used, I'll start showing them off now, but it is worth knowing again, these two over here with the shields, this is who I did the new non-oil that I opened experiment on. Their shields were completely coated in the second new bottle I opened, so that's how I knew it was much better, because you can tell they're not as shiny at all. Everything else though, like the silver and everyone else other than those two, was the old shinier one, but on silver it's really hard to notice. The painting scheme I used for the Iron Golems, let's start, I think he's called the Domitar, actually it might be the leader guy. Either way, this is my favourite just because like can you imagine this guy trying to make a sandwich? Like how are you going to do that with your hands like that? But the colours I used for all of them, as I show you them. The base, let's cover that first, because again, it had already been partially done by the person selling them. I just put some Basilicanum Grey over it, I put some Agrat's Earthshade over it, and then I attached some grass tufts. Boom, done. They did the hard part of getting the stone on there and gluing it on and giving it a base coat, so I just worked off of that, and it's fine. For the colours I used across the Iron Golems themselves, so I actually found an online guide and then I kind of dumbed it down to my level of painting because there was way too much like mixing mediums and things. I'm not doing that. So I did use a brass scorpion citadel paint for all the brass parts of them. Then I put on Flesh Terror red in the parts that should be red. In the areas where it's supposed to be rusted kind of copper bronze or whatever, I used Aethermatic blue. I'll show you that better in a second on a different miniature. Talistar blue on the parts on the handles that are blue, and Leadbelcher silver, and then non-oil only on the silver. The wash I did over the bronze parts prior to putting the red on is called Reichland Flesh Tone, I think it is, or Flesh Shade. It's just one of the washes Citadel does. It's Reichland something for sure. So I did that over the bronze before putting on the red. That adds the definition to that. and then non-oil on the silver to add the definition to that. For their skin tones, they're actually very pale in the official paint job, but they live in like a volcano, so that didn't seem right to me. So I did what the painting step-by-step I found suggested, which was to use Fire Slayer flesh, but very thinned out. So, you know, just so there's a burnt tone, but not necessarily that they're dark-skinned. So I went with that, and it kind of worked. As I was mentioning though, the brass scorpion I use for all the iron parts on all the metal parts that aren't silver on them. So if you can imagine, this is the great difference. So these parts here, all of his armor that's red now, and the goldish trim, that's all the brass scorpion. The only difference is, well, the Flesh Terror red obviously has been put on top after the Reichland tone wash was put on. But the only difference between this and this had the Reichland wash I'm talking about, and this had Aethermatic Blue. Aethermatic Blue on top of Brass Scorpion creates this wonderful aged look that is really, really good. And that looks like two different colours, right? It looks like two different base colours were used and worked up. It's the exact same colour. Like, that started as that. Obviously without the wash creeping into the recesses. But it works really, really well. It's definitely a technique I'm going to use in the future again. Aethermatic Blue is great for that kind of effect if you want metal to look aged or like, you know, copper. This little guy, this dwarf with the hammers, I did use some Blood for the Blood God on some of them. I didn't use it for all of them. The ones that looked especially like bloodthirsty, I was like, yeah, we'll slap a little bit of blood on there. Why not? I love that his beard is also just metal. It's not an actual beard. I wonder if he's ashamed. Does he even have a real beard under there? Who knows? I don't think many of them look great from the back because they all have this, like, they all have a chain link skirt and then just the connecting thing to their metal. So from behind, I don't think they look particularly interesting, but I love the poses, and they were super easy to paint. That's why I just did them. And usually I don't like doing assembly line paint jobs where everything is the same, but at least the poses and the figures in general are so diverse. I was like, you know what, this doesn't feel bad, and it's quite quick as well, especially with thanks to the guide I saw. If you just search for like Iron Golem painting guide, it would be like one of the top options. It was just a blog post from years ago, and I just adapted it to my own skill level because I'm not at the skill level of mixing mediums and having 10 different tones and things like that. We'll do the shield guys last because they were done slightly differently because of the wash experiment. But this last lady with her mid-throw smacking this chain ball into somebody, very fun. And I don't have anything else to say about how I painted them because, again, it's not like I came up with a paint job. They are very close to the official paint job, it is worth saying. The only difference is their skin tone. That's basically it. But beyond that, you can do your skin. Like, if I did want to match it up more to the official paint job's skin tone, probably just use the base coat with a wash over it. Just maybe not non-oil, maybe Agrat's Earthshade, make it look a little bit dirtier. That might work because they almost look like zombies in the official paint job, which might just be in the lore, I'm not sure. But yeah, these two, the silver parts, were done with the newer non-oil, the second new non-oil I opened. So I don't think you can really tell the difference on just the chainmail parts, but as I say, I was very generous with how much I slopped on all the shield because normally with the rest of them, the red parts had no non-oil on them at all. It is catching the light a little bit, you can definitely tell right there, it is catching the light, but it doesn't look like it's slimy. It doesn't look like it's got a thick layer of water on it, or it's pulled into some kind of black sludge, which is what was happening with the other one, which is what leads me to believe it's a bad mix, or it's the gloss version accidentally marked in a pot for the shade version. But either way, very happy with how these turned out. Very, very fun warband. I love the look of them, and they will definitely be one of the two sides featured in the next video. I'm going to have, I don't know who they're going to go up against, we'll just have to wait and see, but I'm hoping to have it on some kind of snow themed map, so we'll probably see those rocks on there as well, and I'm really looking forward to it. As far as Warcry goes, I think the next warband I want to do for them is Rotmire Greed, whatever they're called, the kind of off-brand Nurgle, which might be quite fun, and I feel like it wouldn't take that long to do them either. Some other stuff is definitely going to take priority, just so we can get some more viewer verdicts in, because I'm enjoying doing those. But I am glad to have basically done a warband from start to finish, and like, I mean, it did take me probably a week because I wasn't painting non-stop, but if I was painting, like while I was doing these, in between when I was waiting on washes drying, I was like, yep, I'll just knock out another iron golem, and it worked. And so for another week, for episode 101, if you don't count the half special I did for Scenery, of getting stuff painted, that is it, and I hope it's inspired you to get through your pile of grey shame. As I mentioned, next time we're probably going to see some Warcry stuff. We're definitely going to see at least one more from Core Clash just because I'm halfway through painting him, so that'll be there for sure. Hopefully I'll find time to do more of the Riot Quest second starter box. But the thing I definitely want to make sure I do is start painting up what's needed to try out the Dead by Daylight board game, which would be 1 killer, 4 survivors. I'm not necessarily going to get the hooks and the generators done. I might just run with those as tokens or just unpainted miniatures, but for the sake of being able to try it out on the channel sooner, I want the bare minimum to be the killer and 4 survivors, because then at least that's what you're mainly focusing on. Battletech, there will definitely be some Battletech. I've been painting up some more mechs in my mercenary band's colours, but I'm also going to be painting up Snords Irregulars, and I'm going to be doing a very irregular colour scheme for Snords Irregulars, using what I've learned in the past year. So hopefully I will have at least one thing to show you from that next time, if not the whole box of Snords Irregulars that you can buy. The Lancer Star, I forget if there's 4 or 5 in there, but either way, if you want to show me what you've been painting, if you're in my Discord, you can show me there. If you have Blue Sky, you can show me on there as well. You can get the links for either if you just pop by Twitch when I'm streaming and ask. I'll throw you a link. Anyway, get painting, enjoy it. Doesn't matter how good you are at it, as long as you enjoy it, that's the important part. And I will see you again in roughly 2 weeks for another update. Until then, ta-ta for now.